The first time I met Karen, it was like being hit by a human hurricane. Little did I know, her intrusive words would set off a chain of events that would test the very foundation of my marriage when Karen says I need to get pregnant so my husband won't cheat on me. Here's how it all went down. The first time I met Karen, we were at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue in Dallas when she zoned in on me, her sights set with unnerving precision. The sun was relentless that day, but not as relentless as Karen's ideas about marriage. I was flipping veggie burgers on the grill, enjoying the sizzle and the casual banter with others when she sidled up next to me, a glass of Chardonnay in one hand, the other gesturing wildly as she spoke. "You need to have babies, you know," she said, without even a pretense of a hello. I remember laughing, thinking it was some kind of joke. "Excuse me?" I replied, eyebrows raised. "Babies. You and Mark have been married, what, 3 years now? If you don't tie him down with a kid, he's gonna cheat on you. Men need that kind of responsibility or they'll stray." I stared at her, my burger flipping hand frozen mid-air. The audacity was almost comical. "Karen, I'm not sure that's any of your business," I said, as politely as I could muster. She waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away my objection like a pesky fly. "Oh, honey, I'm just looking out for you. All men cheat, but a baby? That's an anchor." "Karen, that's a pretty warped view on relationships," I shot back, my tone more acidic than I intended. But Karen was like a dog with a bone, and she wouldn't let it go. "Look, I'm telling you this as a friend. Mark's a good-looking guy. You think he's not getting offers?" Her words were like a slap in the face. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, my hands clenched tight around the spatula. "You don't know what you're talking about, Karen." "Just watch," she retorted, tipping her wineglass toward me as if toasting to an inevitable future she had concocted in her mind. I wanted to tell her then, to shout it in her face that I was infertile, that Mark and I had been trying for a baby for the better part of those 3 years, that every month was a roller coaster of hope and heartbreak, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, the smell of charcoal and burning vegetables filling the space between us. The weeks following that confrontation were a blur of doctor's appointments and tears. Karen's words echoed in my ears, taunting me with the suggestion that my worth as a partner was measured by my ability to bear children. Then, one evening, as I sat across from Mark at our small kitchen table, I decided to open up about my encounter with Karen. His face hardened as I spoke. "She said what?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper but sharp like a knife's edge. I nodded, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "She said that you'd cheat on me if we didn't have kids." Mark reached across the table, taking my hands in his. "That's ridiculous. You know that, right? I love you, not some potential future child. And if we can't have kids, we'll figure it out together. There's more than one way to make a family." His words were soothing, a balm to the rawness of my soul. It was in that moment I realized the depth of his love and the strength of our bond. Months went by and the incident with Karen became a distant, albeit bitter, memory. Mark and I explored our options, settling on the idea of adoption. It felt right, like we were on the path to bringing a child into our home who needed us as much as we needed them. Karen, however, seemed to have a sixth sense for vulnerability. At another gathering, this time an indoor affair celebrating a friend's promotion, she cornered me once again. "So, any news on the baby front?" she probed, a hint of a smirk on her face. I sighed, weary of the dance we seemed destined to perform. "Actually, yes, Mark and I are looking into adoption." The smirk faltered, replaced by a look of confusion. "But that's not the same. It won't stop him from—" "Karen," I interrupted, my voice steady and calm. "I'm gonna stop you right there. My relationship with Mark is none of your business. We're happy, we're strong, and we're going to be parents. Not that I have to explain any of this to you." Her mouth opened and closed, like a fish out of water, and for a moment I enjoyed the silence that followed. The silence that followed was brief. Karen's expression shifted from shock to that all-too-familiar look of self-assuredness. "Well, if you think some random child is going to keep your marriage safe, you're naive," Karen snapped back. "Blood ties are what matter. What if the kid has issues, or doesn't look like you, and Mark feels no connection? Then what?" I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I took a deep breath trying to keep my composure. It was evident that Karen thrived on these confrontations, on planting seeds of doubt wherever she went. But this was my life, my marriage, and I wasn't going to let her twisted perspectives dictate my happiness. "Karen, you seem to have a very traditional view of families and what keeps a marriage together. Mark and I believe our bond is stronger than that. And a family is built on love, not just biology. If you can't understand that, then I feel sorry for you." Her eyes narrowed. "You're just scared I'm right. That's why you're getting defensive. Mark needs a real—" "A real what, Karen?" I interjected, feeling a mixture of disbelief and rage. "A real chain around his neck? A real sign of ownership? Because that's not what a child is. That's not what a marriage is." People around us began to notice the tension, their conversations dwindling into a murmur of curiosity. I saw Mark across the room, his gaze locked onto ours, a look of concern etched across his face. Karen leaned in, her voice a harsh whisper meant only for my ears. "You'll see. When things fall apart, don't come crying to me. I tried to warn you. The audacity of her, the utter gall, was nearly laughable. Nearly. Karen, listen to me very carefully. Mark and I are solid. We are adopting a child because we want to, not because we're trying to fix or save our marriage. We don't need a child for that. Our love is not conditional upon a child, biological or adopted. I could see her jaw clench, her eyes searching mine for a weakness, a sign of surrender, but she wouldn't find it. I was done letting her words cut through me. Let me make one thing crystal clear, I continued, my voice rising in strength. I don't care what outdated notions you have about family and fidelity. Your negativity and judgment are unwelcome in my life. I trust my husband and I know who we are together. And when we adopt our child, they will be loved unconditionally. That's what real commitment is about, Karen. It's about love, not anchors. The room was quiet now, all eyes on us. Karen's face had turned a shade of crimson that clashed violently with her peach blouse. For a moment, I thought she would explode with another hurtful tirade, but she didn't. Instead, she took a step back, her lips pursed tightly. Well, we'll just see about that, won't we? Karen finally said, her voice thin and forced. Then with an air of defeated arrogance, she turned on her heel and walked away. Mark made his way through the crowd to me, his eyes filled with concern and love. Are you okay? He asked, wrapping his arm around me. I smiled up at him, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Yeah, I am. We are. And in that moment, surrounded by friends who offered smiles of support and nods of respect, I knew we would be more than okay. We would thrive, not just despite Karen's venomous words, but in open defiance of them. From that day forward, I made a promise to myself never to let Karen or anyone else's poisonous views affect me again. Mark and I would continue to build our family on our own terms, with love and commitment as the foundation, not fear or obligation. And in the months that followed, as we welcomed a bright-eyed little one into our lives, I learned the true meaning of family. It wasn't about anchors, it was about roots and wings. Roots to ground us and know where we belong, and wings to fly and explore life's limitless possibilities together. This is why we should never let others' toxic opinions define our happiness. Karen got served. It's heartwarming to see how this couple stood up against her negativity and built their own version of a happy family. Love wins. As an English teacher at a bustling language school in Brazil, my days were filled with the delightful ensemble of students, except for one, Sid. Little did I know that Sid's defiance and entitled behavior would unfold into a gripping saga, challenging the very essence of my job. From the battle of the well-behaved hangman to a relentless mother's influence, here's how it all went down. It was about a year ago that the little saga of Sid unfolded, and with time stretching out before me like the endless Brazilian beaches, I find myself reminiscing and compelled to share this tale. I was an English teacher at a bustling language school here in Brazil, a country as diverse in its people as in its approach to education. My days were filled with the musical tones of Brazilian Portuguese, punctuated by the earnest attempts at English phrases by my students. Students of all sizes and ages, but my favorites? The children, undoubtedly. In March of the previous year, I was greeted by a new cluster of 8-year-olds, a group that brought the term mixed bag to life. They were a delightful ensemble, every single one, except for Sid, not her real name, but she bore an uncanny resemblance to the beloved sloth from Ice Age, both in demeanor and pace. Sid was, to put it mildly, an educational enigma, a child who found joy in the play but viewed the academic side, the very essence of my job, as a personal affront. The activities were hardly advanced. Connect the word to the picture, color the toys, yet she remained immovable, a stubborn fixture amid a sea of busy little hands. To counteract such challenges, the school had armed us with a variety of strategies and policies. One, in particular, stood out, imparted to me by a colleague who swore by its effectiveness, the well-behaved hangman. This was no ordinary game. A student stepped out of line and a limb would be added to their hangman. It was simple, yet the implications were grave. A full hangman meant a call home, a conversation I dreaded yet was bound to uphold. Sid, bless her heart, was fascinated with the idea of being first in the line to leave class, a daily prize that seemed to hold more allure than any sticker or star chart. But her hangman was always the most complete. Our conversations with Karen, her mother, were an exercise in restraint and diplomacy. On one such occasion, Karen confronted me with, "You're punishing her for being late now?" I tried to keep the frustration from my voice as I replied, "Karen, the rule is clear and fair for everyone." "But she wants asterisk to be first," Karen pressed, her voice edged with annoyance. "It's about more than just wanting," I explained. "It's about earning it, about being fair to all the kids." I was skating on thin administrative ice, fully aware of the balancing act required by private educational institutions. Pleasing the parents was an unwritten part of the job description, it seemed. As the year trudged on, punctuality became the newest battlefield. Sid's habitual tardiness was clashing with the well-behaved hangman policy. The other parents understood the importance of the rule. They saw the fairness in it. But Karen, armed with excuses of piano lessons and a schedule that was seemingly carved in stone, refused to budge. One particularly memorable afternoon, the phone call came. Karen's voice was cool, the undercurrent of frustration unmistakable. "I heard you've been punishing my daughter for being late." "It's not punishment, Karen," I said, the words tasting like bitter coffee. "It's about maintaining order. Sid isn't being singled out, it's the same for everyone." "But she has piano lessons, they're important," Karen insisted. "And so is her English education," I countered. "All I'm asking is for her to arrive on time." Karen promised change, a compromise that seemed to placate her for the moment, but not for long. The next thing I knew, I was summoned by my coordinator, a man who seemed perpetually caught between a rock and a hard place. He recounted his conversation with Karen, who had transformed our classroom's orderly exit strategy into a draconian measure. "Is this an English class or a boot camp?" he queried, echoing Karen's words. I was taken aback, left scrambling for a defense. "It's about teaching them more than language. It's about life skills." He shook his head, weary. "Just teach English, nothing more." The order was clear. The well-behaved hangman was hung out to dry, and I was left searching for a new method to engage my students and instill discipline. As the semester rolled on, I introduced a game of knowledge answer correctly, earn points. It was straightforward, and more importantly, it was fair. But fairness, it seems, is subjective. Karen's dissatisfaction was relentless, her complaints a constant hum in the background of the semester. My coordinator, though sympathetic, was powerless. Karen's influence in our community was formidable. December arrived with a chill that had nothing to do with the Brazilian heat. I was let go. The reasons given were vague, the justification flimsy. But the message was clear. I had become a casualty in the battle between education and expectation. In the end, I sought justice in court for my dismissal and won. A bittersweet victory that left me jobless, but vindicated. Yet, as I ponder the journey, I'm reminded that education is as much about the lessons we teach as it is about the ones we learn. And from Sid, from Karen, from the school, I learned plenty. This shows the challenges faced by teachers when dealing with entitled behavior and the delicate balance between maintaining discipline and pleasing parents. It sheds light on the importance of fairness and the impact of parental influence in educational settings. Parents always dumped their kids on me at family events, turning me into an involuntary babysitter. But one day I decided enough was enough. Little did they know, I had a plan to put an end to this never-ending cycle. Here's how it all went down. It seems quite a few people have similar stories. So here is mine and how I handled it. I was probably a bit of a jerk at the end of it all. I never wanted to be a babysitter, but somehow, that's what I always ended up being at every family gathering. It didn't matter if I barely knew the kids or their parents, they would always find a way to dump them on me and disappear. It started when I was 14 and continued until I was in my 30s. I'd moved away from my extended family when I was 5, so I didn't see them very often. But whenever there was a birthday, a wedding, or a holiday, they would invite me and my parents to join them. And that's when the trouble began. The first time it happened, I was sitting at a table with my cousin and his wife, who had just had a baby. They seemed nice enough, but as soon as they finished their food, they handed me the baby and said they were going to get some drinks. They didn't ask me if I wanted to hold him or if I knew how to take care of him. They just assumed I would be happy to do it. I wasn't. I had never held a baby before, and I had no idea what to do with him. He was tiny and fragile, and he smelled like milk and diapers. He started crying after a few minutes, and I panicked. I tried to rock him, to sing to him, to make funny faces at him. Nothing worked. He just cried louder and louder, attracting the attention of everyone in the room. I looked around for his parents, hoping they would come back and rescue me, but they were nowhere to be seen. They had left me alone with their child, without a word of explanation or apology. I felt angry and betrayed. How could they do this to me? This happened many times over the years until I had enough. The last time it happened, when I was now in my 30s, at a party and gathering with my husband's family. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Once again, parents came over to introduce themselves and left their baby with me, even though I clearly told them that I was uncomfortable with them doing so. But it would only be for a minute. 10 minutes pass, 30 minutes pass, as the hour mark approaches and the baby is getting very fussy. I got up from the table, carrying the baby with me, and walked towards the bar where I had last seen them. I pushed my way through the crowd of people, ignoring their stares and comments. I finally spotted them, laughing and chatting with some other relatives with their glasses of wine in hand. They looked relaxed and happy, oblivious to my plight. I marched up to them and thrust the baby into their arms. "Here," I said, "take your kid back." They looked at me with surprise and annoyance. "What's wrong?" my sister-in-law asked. "What's wrong?" I repeated incredulously. "You left me with your baby for an hour without asking me or telling me where you were going. You expected me to babysit him while you had fun. That's what's wrong." They exchanged shocked glances. "We're sorry," her husband said. "We just wanted to catch up with everyone. We didn't think you would mind." "Well, I do mind," I said firmly. "I'm not your babysitter. I'm your sister-in-law, and I came here to enjoy myself, not to look after your kid." They mumbled some more apologies and excuses, but I didn't listen. I turned around and walked away from them, feeling proud of myself for standing up to them. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. The next time I saw them, they had another baby, and they tried to do the same thing again. And so did other relatives who had kids, in multiple occasions. It became a pattern. Every time there was a family event, someone would dump their kid on me and disappear. It didn't matter if they were my aunts, uncles, cousins, or in-laws. They all seemed to think that because I was an only child, and because I didn't have kids of my own, that I would love to play nanny for them. They were wrong. I hated it. I hated being treated like a free service. I hated being ignored and taken for granted. I hated being stuck with kids who were noisy, messy, demanding, and sometimes rude. I hated missing out on the fun and the conversations that everyone else was having. I hated feeling like an outsider in my own family. So I stopped going. I stopped accepting their invitations. They didn't seem to notice or care either. They never asked me why I stopped coming. They never apologized for what they did. They never tried to make it up to me. They just moved on with their lives, without me in family parties/events. And so did I. It sounded in the original post that I stopped seeing family altogether. I still see them, just never in a party family gathering situation. And they act like nothing ever happened, and life goes on. I love hanging out with the family outside of the party gathering situation, and to be fair, the kids are great fun to be around as long as I'm not expected to babysit them, which I never once said I was okay with at any point. At the end of the day, we are all still family, and I think they got the message that I'm not their babysitter. They do now treat me with respect when I see them on the rare occasion for a visit, and maybe by standing up for myself to people I care about and love was the reason. It's unfortunate that the OP had to endure being constantly burdened with babysitting responsibilities at family events. It's commendable how they eventually stood up for themselves and set boundaries. Family dynamics can be complicated, but it's important to communicate and assert one's needs and boundaries. It's also positive to see that the author still maintains a relationship with their family outside of the party gathering context. A seemingly innocent encounter that would soon turn into a turbulent battle of wills at 30,000 feet. Little did I know, as I boarded the plane, that this would be a journey filled with unexpected twists and clashes, with a woman who seemed determined to make my flight a living nightmare. Buckle up and prepare for a tale of patience tested, boundaries crossed, and the unforgettable showdown with entitled Grandma. Here's how it all went down. It was a little over a year ago, an eventful journey I've been meaning to talk about, and with time to spare today, I'm finally putting it into words. It was a typical Friday afternoon when my wife and I were to attend my cousin's wedding in Denver. As is our custom, we had booked aisle seats across from each other for a little legroom and ease of conversation. 11C for me, 11D for her. Our late arrival at the gate forced me to check in my bag, so I motioned for my wife to go ahead while I handled the luggage fiasco. Once aboard, I was met with an unexpected sight. Grandma Karen, comfortably seated in my spot, 11C. I approached with as much politeness as I could muster. "Excuse me, ma'am, but you seem to be in my seat." She gave me a look of innocence, standing but motioning toward the window seat as if to invite me in. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm actually supposed to be in the aisle seat," I said, pointing to my ticket. Her response was a masterclass in feigned ignorance. "But I'm in this row, and I chose this seat first," she declared, as if that settled it. With a queue of passengers snaking behind me, I inhaled deeply, hoping my face didn't betray the growing irritation. "Ma'am, while I understand I have 11C on my ticket and we need to sit in our assigned seats, can you please move over to your seat?" Karen played her next card, taking out her ticket, scrutinizing it as if it was a coded message. "It says here I'm 11A, which I think is the aisle," she said, looking utterly bewildered. My patience was on the brink when, thankfully, our neighboring passenger in 12C lent her voice to clarify Karen's confusion. With a huff that could have stirred the clouds outside, Karen slid into her rightful seat. I settled into mine, donned my noise-canceling headphones, and braced for what I hoped would be a peaceful flight. But peace was not on the itinerary. Hardly had the plane leveled off when Karen began an incessant tapping on my shoulder. I removed one headphone, raising an eyebrow in question. "You've been outright ignoring me," she chastised. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was listening to a podcast. What can I help you with?" I tried to keep the peace. "I need my book. It's in the overhead bin," she stated, as if she had said it 1,000 times. I sighed. "We're still climbing. We're not allowed to get up yet." Her reply was a lament about unhelpful offspring. As soon as the seatbelt sign flicked off, she was on me again, tugging at my shirt. I stood, intending to let her pass, but she just gaped at me, hands raised helplessly. "Why aren't you fetching my book?" she demanded. "Ma'am, I thought you wanted to grab it yourself. I'm not comfortable digging through your belongings," I said, trying to remain calm. "Just hand me my bag," she finally snapped. I retrieved the bag, quickly excused myself, and headed to the restroom. On return, she still stood in the aisle, bag gaping open, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. "My book is missing, thanks to you. I didn't pack your bag, ma'am, but here, have this magazine instead," I offered, extending the hunting magazine I had. She sneered at the magazine as if I'd handed her a venomous snake. "That won't do," she said, resuming her seat, her knitting needles clicking like the ticking of a clock. The flight trudged on. Karen's demands grew. A Diet Coke. This instant, complaints of hunger met with silent bites of my homemade turkey sandwich and snide remarks on my apparent rudeness for not sharing my meal. Landing provided no respite. As soon as we touched down, she bulldozed through the aisle, forcing me into an awkward tango with the other passengers. Bags down, she demanded more, expecting me to collect her scattered belongings. It took the firm direction of a flight attendant to nudge Karen out of the way, allowing others to disembark. Karen's indignation knew no bounds, pointing at me as the culprit of her misfortune. Once clear of the plane, I reunited with my wife at a bar, downing a bourbon while recounting the trials of my flight. She listened, eyes wide with incredulity and a touch of humor, at the tale of the flight that felt like a gauntlet thrown by the fates. In total, the experience felt like a microcosm of human interaction at 30,000 feet, a battle of wills, an exercise in patience, and a stark reminder that not all turbulence is caused by the weather. And so, with a chuckle and a shake of the head, we toasted to the journey's end and to the many Karen encounters we hope to avoid in the future. It's unfortunate how encounters with entitled individuals can turn a seemingly ordinary experience into a challenging one. This tale serves as a reminder to maintain patience and composure, even in the face of difficult situations. Cheers to the storyteller for navigating through this turbulent flight and finding humor in the aftermath. Living by myself in the city, I thought I found solace in my high school buddies, who became my roommates. Little did I know that our shared living arrangement would turn into a nightmare of unpaid rent and broken promises. As the pandemic hit and evictions were put on hold, tensions rose and loyalties shattered. Here's how it all went down. Living by myself in the city, man, it gets to you. The silence is deafening, and the company of four walls does nothing to ease the emptiness. My girlfriend, she's got her own deal living with her mom, so shacking up together was off the table. But that's where my high school buddies came into the picture. You know the kind of friends I'm talking about? The ones who you swear will be in your life forever. The brothers from another mother. The ones who are supposed to have your back no matter what. I had 3 of those. And this is a story for all you young or new adults out there. Take it as a word of caution. After the high school chapter closed, I made my move to a larger city to stick close to my high school sweetheart. She's my fiancée now. For a couple of years, I hopped from one room rental to another, tackling the ups and downs of adulting solo. But man, does loneliness creep up on you. And given my lady's living situation, the possibility of moving in with her was zilch. Now over time, my high school crew, they each hit a rough patch. You know how it is. Life just slams you down sometimes, and they all had their reasons for wanting to ditch our old small-town life. One by one, they migrated to the city, and before I knew it, I was sharing a roof with my 3 best friends from back in the day. Every adult I knew, they all warned me, mixing friends and business, or in this case, living arrangements, it's a recipe for disaster. But to me, these guys weren't just friends, they were family. They wouldn't mess this up, or so I thought. We'll cut through the details. Imagine 2 years crammed in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. It was what it was, until just before the COVID pandemic hit. That's when things took a turn. You see, my girlfriend's neighbor, a decent guy who I'd gotten to know after dog-sitting for him a bunch, was moving out. He had a house in the city and didn't want to sell it. Talk about timing, right? My roommates and I were in the market for a new place. He cuts us a deal on his 3-bedroom house, $1,750 a month. That's a steal, considering the market was nuts, with crummier places in worse neighborhoods going for almost the same price. It was a no-brainer. We shook hands, and bam, we had a new place. 2 of my buddies shared the master bedroom, splitting the cost, and the other guy and I took the smaller rooms. Financially, it seemed like everything was clicking into place. Things were good for a while anyway. Then the pandemic hit. Our days consisted of gaming, smoking, and binge-watching whatever caught our fancy. It was an endless loop. Me, though, I had my girl. I'd spend heaps of time at her place next door, helping with chores, hanging with her kid brother, keeping up with school and work. My buddies, they stuck to the routine. Smoke, game, rinse, repeat. Then, the state announced a moratorium on evictions, and that's when our steady life started spiraling. Holding down a job, keeping up with bills, it was like those basic responsibilities were alien concepts to my friends. I was the baby of the group, yet somehow I always ended up covering for their shortcomings. I guess I just couldn't stand the idea of living without the basics like electricity or, a roof over my head. But with the moratorium in place, my roommates got comfortable. Too comfortable. Jobs became optional in their eyes. If one of them managed to snag a job, it'd only be a matter of time before another one was out of work. And let me remind you, our landlord was my buddy. A good guy who gave us a hell of a discount on the rent, trusting my word that my friends wouldn't be a problem. Every month, rent time became a circus. I'd chase them down for their share, and after the first month of the moratorium, they had the audacity to tell me it was unfair for me to ask for rent because the landlord couldn't kick us out. So there I was, begging and nagging them to pull together whatever cash they'd normally blow on their highs just to keep us from drowning. Rent payments slipped later and later. I felt like a fool, young and naive, holding on to this hope that as long as they had some sort of plan for rent, late was better than never. Rent was never on time, though, and my landlord friend was buckling under the financial strain caused by the very people I vouched for. The bills, man, they piled up. So high that I ended up creating this intricate spreadsheet to track who paid what. It laid everything out in the open, just how much each of us was contributing, or in their case, not. And the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I was sinking thousands into this black hole just to keep us afloat. And the kicker? It took me 3 years to clear the debt they left me with on utilities alone. When it all blew up, and boy did it blow up, it was worthy of its own saga. The aftermath? I swore off roommates for good. If there's anything I learned, it's that friendship doesn't equate to shared responsibility. Living with someone? Make damn sure they're on the same page as you when it comes to work ethic and accountability. It's a tough pill to swallow, realizing that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who let you down the hardest. But hey, that's life. You live, you learn, and if you're smart, you don't make the same mistake twice. This story serves as a cautionary tale about the challenges of mixing friendship and shared living arrangements. It highlights the importance of open communication, financial responsibility, and aligning work ethics when living with others. It reminds us that even the closest relationships can be strained when faced with financial and personal struggles. I never expected a simple request for financial help to spiral into a web of secrets and lies. Little did I know my brother's desperate plea for money was just the tip of the iceberg. As tensions rise and accusations fly, the true nature of our family's vacation plans is revealed. Here's how it all went down. I have an older brother, Adam, and my sister-in-law, Stephanie. Every year, my family and I take a big trip, and the timing depends on everyone's schedules. This year, we collectively agreed on the second week of December. The people going on the trip include my husband, Justin, and myself, our twin 2-year-olds, my parents, and my brother, sister-in-law, and their 3-year-old. My mom always handles all the travel arrangements to ensure that everyone is on the same flights. Kids sit with their parents, and we stay at the same hotels, among other things. While my mom takes care of the arrangements, my husband and I always use Zelle Venmo to pay my mom for our portion of the flights and hotels. My brother and sister-in-law do the same thing. This year, we all agreed to go to Disney World in Orlando. As usual, my mom made all the reservations and other arrangements about 2 months ago. My husband and I paid our portion to my mom about a week after the reservations were made. Last night, Adam texted my husband asking if we had paid my parents yet. My husband confirmed that we had paid them a while back. Adam then asked Justin if we could pay for his family's portion of the trip. Not everyone may be familiar with the cost of Disney, but it's very expensive nowadays. Justin explained that we couldn't afford to cover their expenses due to our budget constraints. We both work full-time and make decent money, but we don't have extra funds to spare. My brother and sister-in-law also work full-time, and their child is not in daycare since their mother-in-law watches him for free. In contrast, we have to pay for daycare for our 2 kids. Adam replied with, "Well, okay then," and stopped texting him. This morning, I woke up to several texts from Adam, who was upset with Justin and called him a jerk for not financially supporting their family. I agreed with Justin and explained to Adam that we couldn't afford to provide them with the money they needed within our budget. I apologized for any misunderstanding, but also told Adam that he was out of line for calling Justin a jerk, and I wouldn't tolerate it. Nonetheless, Adam continued to ask me to pay, and suggested that it could be our Christmas present to him, my sister-in-law, and my nephew. If I had the extra money, I would have considered doing it that way, but unfortunately I don't have the means to do so. I informed Adam that I couldn't fulfill his request, and advised him to discuss a payment plan or alternative options with our parents. In response, Adam called both Justin and me jerks and claimed that we had ruined their vacation. I'm kind of surprised by my brother's behavior, but are Justin and I the jerks here? I'm still at work, but I took the advice of a few on here and reached out to both my mom and sister-in-law, separately, and let them know what Adam did. My mom and Stephanie both confirmed their portion of the trip has already been paid, and has been for months. Stephanie had no idea Adam had reached out to Justin and doesn't know why he would. She said she would rein him in and apologize to me for his request. For those asking why we planned this trip when my brother and sister-in-law couldn't afford it, Disney was their idea. After everyone checked on finances, we all agreed, and my mom started making arrangements within provided budgets at that point. Sorry that wasn't clear in my initial post. I'm dealing with this at work. I'm currently sitting in the parking lot at work, waiting to pick up my kids and head home. However, I have some additional information to share. First, I want to make it clear that I love my brother dearly, but I can't believe this is happening in my life right now. Today, I found out that my sister-in-law had a conversation with my brother. It turns out that they have separate checking accounts and a joint savings account. Their separate account is for personal expenses, while the joint account is used for shared and household expenses. My husband and I also follow this approach, and it significantly reduces money-related arguments. I highly recommend it. Now, here's the interesting part. Adam apparently ordered a pair of diamond studs from Tiffany's as a Christmas present for my sister-in-law. However, he was charged 3 times for the same item. Instead of reaching out to the bank and Tiffany's to resolve the issue, he panicked and thought he could borrow money from Justin and me to cover the cost. I feel sorry for him, but I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Oh man, let me tell you about last night. So my brother and his wife come over, right? They're carrying this big aromatic takeout bag, and I'm thinking, okay, cool, food's here. Let's get down to brass tacks. We sit down, and my brother pulls out these bank statements from his jacket like he's about to do some kind of magic trick. Bam! Triple charge from Tiffany's, just glaring at us from the paper. And here I was, ready to play detective, but turns out it was just Adam being Adam. Classic, right? He admits that he got all click-happy with the submit button because the darn page wouldn't refresh. So instead of 1 shiny pair of earrings for my sister-in-law, he's got 3. A full trio of oops, my bad. I gotta admit, I was steamed at first. But seeing him all red-faced and apologetic, what can you do? Justin and I couldn't stay mad at him. But you can bet your bottom dollar this is going to be our get-out-of-jail-free card for the next family game night. Remember the time Adam bought triple the bling? Is going to be a classic line. Now Adam's on the phone with Tiffany's, probably sweet-talking customer service into a return. I feel for my sister-in-law, though. The poor thing, her surprise got all twisted up. And I tell Adam, dude, next time, just ask for help. No need to turn into a one-man circus. He tells me he tried to go to Justin first, which, yeah, makes sense. Justin's the chill one, and I'd have totally roasted Adam for it. Still, I tell him, honesty's the way to go, man. Don't get all prickly about it. He gets it, I think. But we'll see. Next time he's about to triple down on something, maybe he'll take a breath and hit up his little sis instead. That being said, I only have a little while longer in the day to spend cuddling my babies, so I'll be doing just that. Communication is key, and it's unfortunate that your brother didn't approach the situation with honesty from the beginning. It's also interesting how the situation with the triple charge for the diamond studs unfolded. It's good to see that you and your husband were able to forgive your brother and find humor in the situation. Family dynamics can be complicated, but it seems like you have a strong bond despite the occasional bumps in the road. Thanks for sharing this entertaining story. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.